Plaidman here. Today is about conspiracy theories. I wanted to make a part 3, and I figured I should just chill out on that subject of the when is violence okay and when is it not? When is it okay to punch first, ask questions after? Or better yet, punch first, ask questions never. Anyway, so I want to skip that for a moment and just let it lie. I am always open to comments, criticisms, suggestions on what you would like to see. And frankly, I was going to do a review on a movie, but I want to rewatch it, so I'm going to rewatch it. But in the process of listening to somebody else do a review on a movie, I was inspired by a subject that one could say is near and dear to my heart. Matter of fact, my now wife even mentioned it in our vows that it was like one of the things. No, not my wife. I'm sorry. Her sister mentioned it afterwards in the that I was into conspiracy theories. And I feel like that makes certain people run for the hills and other people hunker down and they're like, let's listen. And everything in between. So there's that. So simply put, what we're talking about is conspiracy theories, kind of the concept of what makes them. I'm not going to go into the definitions, but what I really wanted to get into is the fundamentals of kind of both sides, the extremes of both sides. So on one end, before we get too into it, the concept of a conspiracy theory is something happened, right? And there is, what tends to happen is there is the information that is presented by the media, by a government entity, so on and so forth, okay? And then you get other individuals who kind of look into and collate and make connections of dots, and they're like, well, is that really what happened? Okay, mainstream media is saying this, but is that really what happened? And that is kind of the fundamental building blocks of what a conspiracy theory is. And you get into stuff like 9/11, obviously, JFK assassination, obviously, and many more. There's why we went into, was it Vietnam? Yeah, I think it was the Vietnam War, and what started that. There's a conspiracy about Pearl Harbor, that the American government knew that it was going to happen and allowed it to happen, yada, yada, yada. So, and it's fundamentally difficult because you have this situation where the government, when you get the government involved, and then you also get the media involved, and for those of you that don't know, they're, at least now, and I think for a long time, but at least now, the mainstream media and the government kind of work hand in glove. They're very much connected. And that's unfortunate because that's not really what the media should be. And I say mainstream, I should call them corporate media because they're fastly becoming not the mainstream. But that's a different discussion. So the corporate media and the government are saying blah happened, and then you have other individuals who look into things and they're like, but okay, and here's what it boils down to. Is, let's say the story is these 10 things, right? And then what people will notice is well, this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense. And so you got half of your story has holes in it. Now, if the government and the corporate media was transparent about how they got their information and they wanted to actually give people the information, then a lot of these conspiratorial thoughts would kind of get flushed out and worn away. One thing that became really prolific that ended up being, as far as I know, is the Sandy Hook shooting, where there was this concept that, oh, actually this was some sort of government op and people didn't actually die and yada, yada, yada. And it became a whole thing, and it's recent news. And if you don't know about this, they just sued and won against Alex Jones, and they're trying to get close to $1 billion from him. not an Alex Jones defender, but if you actually look at the details, and Viva Fry and Barnes and Rakita Law did really good information about that trial, you'll find that what they're suing him for and the trial that happened was really shady. It was a decimation lawsuit. No, defamation lawsuit. And that's a whole thing. But getting outside of like any specific thing, or sorry, just to finish with that, the Parkland shooting, horrible situation, and I could understand, because it's such a traumatic event that happened, that I could understand the authorities involved, the police and the media and so on and so forth. They would want to keep certain things buttoned up, because you don't want to necessarily provide a certain amount of information to then, in theory, have some other potential person copy and paste that, because that happens often enough. However, when you take away information and you don't give all of the information just equally and safely, what ends up happening is people will connect dots, and sometimes they exist and sometimes they don't. And that's one of the things that happen with that. Now, I frankly don't know every exact detail, so I don't really want to get into it. But there is, the two biggest ones that I can think of off the top of my head being the JFK assassination and 9/11. And I'll just talk to you about those specifically. So with the JFK assassination, the consensus, the agreed upon consensus is that it was planned and coordinated by one individual. He shot several times, and he ended up killing the president. And then fled, and then was later caught, and then blah blah blah, and then he was assassinated. And that's all well and good, but you get into the magic bullet theory, where like the bullet ricocheted 11 different ways, and I was just like, what? And then you get the guys who they try these things. I forget what they're called. Not the Try Guys, some other guys. And they tried it, and they're like, technically it could happen. And it's like, yeah, no. But okay, I guess it could happen. So you get weird things like that. And like, okay, that's just odd for... Then you get like, well, why did they go down that route? Why were they going that slow? Why was there no defense for the president at that time? Like, there's a lot of weird things that happened. And then you also look at JFK at the time. He said no to a failed operation in Cuba, the Bay of Pigs incident. So at that time, JFK had a slew of enemies. And so it's realistic to be like, well, maybe somebody had him whacked. So there's that, right? And once you have that possibility, unless you give clear-cut, like bulletproof evidence that no, this is what happened, you're always going to get people who are like, but is that really what happened? Because I don't believe you. And unfortunately, the corporate media and governments, pretty much every government, has a history of lying to their people and hiding information that they deem like, well, that's national security. Sorry, we can't tell you. And corporate media is just, they're all about the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. Plus, they're really, unfortunately, they should be disconnected, but they're very much like, oh, well, if the government says this, and frankly, I feel like there is an entity above both parties that is effectively saying, hey, government, you can do this, and then, hey, corporate media, you can do this, and it all goes to this other entity. But that's me with the tinfoil hat, so sorry. I'm not wearing my normal hat today. Anyways, the other instance I will give you is 9/11. And both of these instances are horrible and tragic, and hopefully they never ever get repeated again. God, that just sucks so bad. But aside from that, there's a litany of things with 9/11 that are outpoints. And it is fascinating. I've got into it several times with people, and it's very fascinating how it has just been two opposite things. And I really don't want to get into 9/11 because I know a lot about it, and it's just frustrating. But simply put, the data that the corporate media provided and that the government, investigated doesn't really work. It suggests that you believe things that don't happen in the real world. So when you go beyond the pale, like beyond even like your most fantastical story of science fiction or fantasy, and you're trying to get people to eat it, lots of people have, and there's that. And this is the problem that I actually want to talk about. I've talked with lots of people. I think people are fascinating and wonderful. And one thing I've run into is that there are a large section of the population that they're not really paying attention to the greater things that are going on. They get a little bit of news and then they're like, this is my opinion based on what that little bit of news said. They don't investigate it themselves. You have people who basically, they don't ask why. They don't ask how. They don't ask questions. They're just like, this is how it is. This is what I need to do. These are the people who will spend $400 on Black Friday because they think it's at a discount, but in fact, it's not. It literally was $400, like it was at $450, and it was discounted, and then I'm missing the meme, but you get the point. You get people who think they're getting a discount and they'll pay full price, still thinking they're getting a discount, and good for them, whatever. The problem lies in these people. They're a massive amount of the population. These are the people that will eat up everything that Disney makes and just love Pixar movies and love when the bad guy just gets defeated. And they have this concept of like, no, people can't do weird things, right? So you have that segment of the population where they're like, yeah, there are bad people, but like the good guys will always win, right? And they have no concept, even though you show them a movie where it's like you have a bad guy who's pretending to be a good guy, and then it reveals that he's a bad guy. Even if you show them that, they will not equate it to real life, like that there are people in real life in positions of power who have control, and like you think they're a good guy, but in actual fact, they're a bad guy, but you think they're a good guy. Like they won't make that connection. And it's frustrating because you're just like, so wait, it's perfectly acceptable in your movie to have bad guy who's hidden as a good guy. But in real life, this person couldn't be a bad guy who's hidden? Like, what? Ugh. And then, to make it worse, you just have this. This one I actually believe. You have people who question, like, and I'm not trying to say all conspiracy theories are correct, because they're not. There are certainly ones that are just really off base, okay? But one of the biggest counterpoints to any conspiracy theory, and I just question you to think about this, truly, is, okay, well, if that's what you think, if that's the conspiracy, then how come nobody's come forward and told someone? How come nobody's told the media? How come nobody's written a thing with all their details and sent it into someone and had it released? How come? Oh, that thing happened? Well, that would take like dozens or hundreds of people or even thousands of people. How could all those people not say anything? Weinstein. You know, the whole like, oh, wait, this guy's been abusing women for dozens of years in Hollywood. That guy. The Me Too movement, the pound Me Too. Sorry, hashtag Me Too. Yeah, so that guy was in Hollywood amongst some of the most prolific actors of our time, male and female, and was involved in some of the most atrocious activities, was not revealed. Was married with kids, was not revealed. Silent, mum's the word. And that was like obvious stuff with technology where you could easily record that and put it in. Simply put, man in power. Person in power. Doesn't matter that he was a man. I mean, he factually was. So if that one guy had, and he's not even like top dog in Hollywood, he was just like a high tier producer. There's bigger producers than him. But if that one guy had that much power to ensure that no woman for a dozen plus years, maybe 22 decades, no woman came forward, nobody took her seriously. But I'll do you one better. So let's say something really atrocious happens, okay? And if it was an inside job, it would take a couple hundred people. Let's say 300 people. Well, how come there's no evidence? Have you ever cleared the history on your computer? Have you ever deleted all your emails? Have you ever, thrown away your mail? I don't know. Have you ever turned off your phone because you want to have a private conversation with a friend? Have you ever had a secret with a friend and they never told anybody? If all those things are doable and all those things are free, then all I'd need to add is, so if I ask you to do something that's illegal, I could pay you, I could threaten you, or if none of those worked, I could delete you. Meaning, all right, here's an example. Hey, hey Joe, can you go over and do this horrible thing? Can you go bury this person? Yeah, sure, Bob. Goes, buries the person. Okay, I did it, Bob. Pew. Thanks, Joe. Well, he's dead. Bury him. Kill the guy who buried him. Or pay the guy who buries the other guy so that his silence is golden. Or threaten him, because most people have family. So it's like, if you have a family, most men, and most women for that matter, would do almost anything to keep their family safe. So all you have to do is have a blanket threat that I'll harm your family if you don't do what I say. Voila, suddenly people are more than willing. I'm trying to remember who it was. It was a very infamous leader who basically said that love is good. Like love and fear is good. It's ideal to have love and fear, but if you can't have love, then fear will do. Effectively, like, I don't need love. I can just, if people fear me, that's all I really need to run and control people. So yeah, it's not that hard to have 300 people's private information and realize that we live in a world where people just follow orders. You have people who are more than willing for $10, $20, $50,000 to go and kill someone, no questions asked. They don't care why, what, and whatever. So maybe you had certain people do an op and you're listening in on their stuff and hacked into all their stuff, and you feel like one's cracking, and you put some more pressure and it's still cracking, and then you just kill them. And you can totally make it an accident. Heart attack, car accident. You can hack into cars now, by the way, and so on and so forth. So it's really not hard if one thinks about it. And frankly, there's been so many movies about it and so many stories about it that I just am boggled that people are like, but no way there can be that kind of conspiracy. And it's like, yes, there can. I'm sorry, yes, there can. So instead of assuming that it can't be done, assume it can be done. Basically demand that the corporate media and the government prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is what happened. Treat it as if it's a trial, which is what it should be. Look, if you guys give me all the information and I look at it and I can say, yeah, no, this is what happened, thank you. But if they give you information and you notice all these holes, you're like, what are these holes? And then they're quiet about it, you should start being worried. And then, as with anything, and I'll leave you with this, who gains? If you look at anything that happens, bad, good, indifferent, always ask yourself, who gains? What gain? What's the gain? Who benefits from this happening? And once you start doing that, I think you'll realize that there are people who gain from this. Whether it's people like me who are posting stuff on the internet, get more followers by talking about it, or there's corporate media by talking about it, or there's some other organization that benefits because this thing, like, it might be 2 or 3 degrees separated, but you will find some of the... Who was the vice president when JFK died? Who owned the World Trade Center and got double their insurance money? What happened to Titanic? Was it really called the Titanic, or was it the other boat that he had? Anyhow, that's it. Plaid Man out. Sorry to be super serious. I love you. Making another video tomorrow. Talk to you later. Bye.